Hello and welcome back to the Sensibility Podcast. I am super excited to have Aimee LaLiberte, sorry, I almost got that wrong then, Aimee, sorry, who is from my virtual CFO. Aimee has, we've just been speaking off air, so I'm quite excited now. I've got more of a story based on just directly from her after reading about her as well. She's quite an impressive woman. But her and I are very similar with the money mindset coaching, but she works with business owners. So she's actually, takes businesses from that 6-figure to 7-figure and beyond sort of thing, but works with them, not just on the money mess that can start, often people find themselves into when they get into business. They're focused on actually what they want to do, not really looking at the numbers, not really thinking about creating profit, but they're just trying to get, survive usually is the first part of business, right? You're just trying to get in and actually even first earn something. But then there's the mindset stuff, which can take you to that whole new level. So, Aimee, do you mind just sharing a bit about the business first? And then we're going to talk about you a bit more.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So my business is my virtual CFO, and I work with 6 and 7-figure business owners who are looking to have an intentional relationship with money. And I mean that in terms of like the mindset piece of it, but also the tangible action items like the bookkeeping and the forecasting and the really notions of finance that business owners need to have and the acumen that they need to have in order to run like a maximum profitable business and to create money, any money goal that they desire, but they just don't have the skill set because so many of them are not in business. Like they didn't say, oh my gosh, I can't wait to do my business financials. Once I start my business, they want to create like the service, the product, and the experience. And so I sit at that seat and help them work through all of that by taking care of their finances, making sure that everything's nice and organized, making sure that we have a financial plan in order to drive the goal. But then also we work through the mindset stuff that inevitably comes up with business owners when they're looking to scale and create financial results that they've never had before.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm in finance, and I even found myself early in this piece just going, oh, okay, I don't have time for the bookkeeping. Oh my God, I haven't lodged a tax return for, and a bit different in the US because you get quite high fines if you don't lodge on time, whereas they're a bit more relaxed here, but you do then, you've got to get onto it. We've got GST that we pay our goods and service tax every quarter as well. So there's quarterly taxes that are different to the income tax, the business tax. So it's quite a complicated tax system and sometimes very overwhelming for us business owners. So first of all, I wanted to go back, bit of backtracking to get an idea, just so our listeners have an idea of how you got into this. And we were talking off air about when you started your 20s, we all make mistakes, but you sort of were massively thrown in the deep end when you started college. Can you just share a bit about that?
Sure. So I grew up with this fascination with money, loved money, wrote myself checks with my parents, actual checks. I wanted a safe, to store all my money in. So I always had this really fun relationship. And then all of a sudden it became real when I was 18 and had to start paying for my college and had to self-fund my college education. And it was really a true wake-up call between not just having fun with money, but learning how to manage money. And I learned how to read, promissory notes, and I learned how to advocate for myself with financial aid package and everything. And I can tell you all the amazing things that I figured out and did and the whole sugar coating, but I made so many other mistakes in the process too. I took on credit cards. I ran them up and then never paid them because I just I was sort of oh my gosh, how am I going to pay for this? And then just not understanding the compound effect of not paying your credit cards with late fees, not paying them with the interest that compounds, and then just sort of destroying my credit history all within like the time frame of like being 18 to 19, and then spending the latter part, so that was like freshman year, and then sophomore, junior, and senior year of college, like really like digging myself out of that. I worked 3 jobs in order to pay for my college education and to get this whole thing figured out. And while I will tell you, there was a lot of moments where I just felt really defeated and low. I now, as a 43-year-old woman, I am so grateful that I had that experience, because it really allowed me to understand the importance and significance of the relationship with money, because it is very much a part of our lives on this planet, and understanding how we relate to it and how to create intention from it is something that I'm continuing to learn about. But one thing, like, I just feel like I've been so grateful that I've been able to carry that in from like my college years as like, and now as like a full grown adult with like a family and kids and a husband and like a whole other like life that like didn't exist 23 years ago.
It's that the key things there, the point that we've all got to be aware of our relationship with money, because we get that right, then other things will naturally fall into place. Like, you know, there's services like yours that will actually go, you know what, I'll take the heavy lifting, so to speak, out of your hands, but the mindset stuff does need to be addressed, even if someone's doing your bookkeeping, or lodging your tax returns or doing all of the accounting work for you. You still need to know your numbers, but you also still need to establish the right mindset to build, grow as an individual, but also as a business. Mm-hmm. Can you, it's like, I mean, it's opening a can of worms, because I know from my experience as well, there's lots of stories we could tell with people coming to a sense of a bit of a hot mess. Mm-hmm. But can you give us some examples, just so people who are wondering, what would he mean by my relationship with money? How can we define when somebody's actually really struggling with their relationship with money?
I think that the one of the things that I see so often with my clients is like if like a prospective client does, like, and I talk to them and they are in this like very much rush and hurry energy to get the bookkeeping off of their plate, and they're like, I just need this off of my plate. And that makes me like start to wonder about, are they super intentional and like wanting to create the result of like understanding their financials, or are they in the realm and the energy of abdicating their responsibility so that they can continue to have an avoidant relationship with money? And the thing is that I feel like I so often think that in our world, there's so many like there's so much literature that talks about the right and the wrong way to do money. And I just think that there is a right way for you to do money, and that may be a collection of different strategies that all of these different like financial experts and everything advocate for you to do. But it may not be something that you're going to like take off the shelf and like open up the book and be like, okay, this is the process I'm going to follow. And so really like the relationship with money is not just like, oh, okay, I'm going to like, here are my intentions for my money, but more of like, you know, what's important to me, and like really like, and like, what is my money story? And how has that, like, what are those thoughts that I'm having that are creating these feelings of like avoiding, of shame, of distress, like all of these things? Because when we like really can just distill it down to like thoughts and feelings, we can really see how that's driving our action or inaction that's creating the results. So if we aren't happy with our results, with our money results, it always comes back to our thoughts about it. And then the invitation then becomes like, once you have that awareness, it's the invitation of like, am I willing to make the change that I like? Am I okay in this model, or do I want to create a change and a transformation? And again, it's not as if like, well, this is wrong and this is right. It's just that if you are looking to become a person who has a open, confident relationship with money, and your current situation is derived in like stress, that is not the relationship that you wish to have. So having that awareness is sort of that first step to creating the transformation.
Oh, 100% awareness is key. I really like that you pointed out where, if you consider where you're at with your financial situation, think about the stories that you're telling yourself. And sometimes you're not aware of those stories until you really think about it. Is this the business? Is this the amount of profit that I really wanted when I started the business? I thought I was going to get to 6 figures in the first year and I'm struggling to hit 5. You know, why is that? What's really going on? And what's actually stopping you? Because it's often our thoughts, really, isn't it? About the thoughts, patterns, behaviors that actually are blocking us to get those goals and achieve those goals. A lot of people dismiss it to think, oh, I haven't got my marketing right, or I haven't got this right, or I'm doing too much of that, or I'm just so busy, I'm not getting enough leads. But often it's actually something else, something quite deeper than those excuses.
Yeah, well, and they're just like, it's interesting because they're for me, I like view those as symptoms to a much deeper problem with like thoughts that are deeply rooted, that are on repeat. And I think that everyone has money stories, and I think everyone has thoughts that are amazing about money and that are not so amazing about money. So like, know that there's like a collection of thoughts, and really it's about like, again, the awareness around it, but then also just deciding like, am I going to continue to believe that? Like, one of the things that I always think is really interesting is something like my dad would always say something like, do you think money just grows on trees? And it was always like, or do you think I'm made of money? And I would always be like, what is he talking about? Like, what is this all about?
It's a very generational thing, right?
Right.
The money grows on trees, or do you think I'm made of money? I have actually caught myself saying that to my kids. I go, what? Oh, you know, because it's just deep-seated stuff. And I go, hang on a minute, that's not right. You have to backtrack and explain yourself almost.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just a matter of like turning around and being like, and again, like saying, oh yes, that's what my dad used to say. And like, and just for me, I often think about contextually, like what was happening. And usually he was coming in, my parents were police officers, and he would come in from like after working a full day. And like, I would be like, hey, can I have $5 to go blah, blah, blah. And like, of course, like he just finished working. Like, it's just like, I think there's like this transition into like home life. And so it was like my timing was always off, but like, again, like really slowing down the situation to see where that happened. But then I think once it becomes like you become aware of the thought and how that causes your feelings, it no longer becomes like, oh, my parents did this, you know? And so therefore, like, it's like you're again, abdicating responsibility, because like you are no longer the 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 14-year-old who is not aware of that. You are like in the present moment as a 43-year-old woman, and you have agency over making a decision about whether or not that is something that you want to bring into like this present moment. And really, it's about getting the power back to yourself, bringing yourself back to center, and then proceeding from there. And I know that maybe this is like a super simplification of what I'm saying, like, oh, you can't just do that. And I'm not saying that like, oh, you're going to take the power back and the ownership and then proceed forward and then never have that come back, you know, because again, when it's so deeply rooted in our minds, it's like an oldie but a goodie. It's a track that your brain is so quick to play. And so it's really about giving yourself the grace and patience to have your brain create different neural pathways to thoughts that you do want to have. But that takes time.
It does. The money mindset coaching work is quite the marathon, and it's something that is a long term. And when I start working with a client on this, like with financial planning and, you know, giving financial advice, you have to sort of sit there and go, this isn't just a one-off transaction. We've got to really love each other, right? Because I'm going to take you through a journey, and this stuff does come back. And you're right, we're basically doing that neuroplasticity piece over time, but it takes time and patience and grace. So before, when you were talking, and you can see me, but those who are listening can't, I'm sitting here with a big smile on my face, nodding, going, yep, Yep, 100%. I'm completely agreeing with everything Amy's saying because it is quite a journey, but it's possibly, I mean, for me and from what, we've spoken about offline affair and now as well, this, we're both passionate about this, but it's a lifelong journey, and it's something that you constantly work on yourself as well. Because you were talking about that off air, that this is a, constant process that you put, but every time you get to a point, there's a bit of a growth spurt, and then it makes you a better, well, I think, probably a better coach, but a better person, and, better relationship with money.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think, again, so I have been married for 20 years. It'll be 20 years in October. And I just think about my relationship with my partner, and think about our evolution as 20-year-olds to 40-something-year-olds, with children, and figuring out ourselves, and and going through all these evolutions, and learning how we can adapt through that process, because we have changed from the time that we started dating to getting married. But the deep rooted love and self-respect for us, for each other and for ourselves, is really sort of that secret sauce, if you will, of how we've been able to continue to be in a very deep, loving relationship. And I think the same applies to money. It's this is going to be with you forever. And so it's really deciding to have this commitment with the money, not as a way of I just need to do this, and I need to follow this protocol based on what this person says. No, just being aware of I feel, I'm scared to look at my bank account. Why? And then just have that loving conversation with yourself. Why are you scared about that? And a lot of it comes down to they believe that whatever is going on in the bank account or on the financial statements is tied to their worth. And it is 100% not the case. Those numbers are totally neutral. They mean nothing. But our thoughts about them is what really clouds all of the stuff, and it makes it look like we think that these numbers are facts, and they're just neutral numbers, and our thoughts are really what's informing the rest of our experience with those numbers. But if we also realize that our worth is always intact, that we are always worthy, we are always enough, we are always available to love, to receive love, and to give love, then we can then create a point of neutrality to know that we can then move forward.
That is so profound and so true. So we do in this society, this world that we live in, where information is just always at our fingertips, and we've got, the next big thing, the next Kardashians. There's always, influencers. I just made $1 million in 12 months just doing this on Instagram. There's this whole perception that success equals that financial figure. Mm-hmm. And so when you start up a business, the hardest thing you've got to, come to realize is that it's not going to happen straight. It doesn't happen overnight. We go into business with our skills, not knowing much about how to operate the marketing side or the financial side, and all of these other skills that we've got to pick up and create and learn along the way, or find somebody who can do that. But we've got to then work out, well, hang on, I've got to hire someone to do that. Now I've got to do more work, and not this, that, which can cause you to go quite into a spiral. Then all of a sudden you've got this now new mindset thinking that you're failing because you're not earning the money, or you can't afford to get that person on to do the bookkeeping and all this sort of craziness. But that's not really the case.
Mm-mm. No, and I think that the other thing that I always work with, I recommend to people, regardless of where they are on their journey, but then also working with my clients, is that if they're looking to create these massive financial goals, but, if they're looking to scale their business, and they know that bringing on team is part of that strategy, and they know that they're still they've decided to prioritize paying down debt or whatever the strategy is, they understand that they're going to have to make a decision. Do they slow down their debt pay down in order to create the cash position, in order to then like hire the person, in order to create the growth and scale, and like making choices, but to know that like there's a menu and that there's choices and that there's not like a right or wrong choice to make. Like if you want to focus on paying down the debt, and that means that you are pausing on new hires and that you're going to like consciously decide to do things that are, you know, more do it yourself rather than like outsourced or like bringing on team, like it's not forever. And you have the flexibility and ability, I think, to always change your mind. I think that we often think in these absolutes, this all or nothing thinking, and that's just not the case at all. Like you can, if, you know, it's like debt is bad. We're told debt is bad, but it's like, okay, if we decide that we love all our reasons for carrying the debt because we know that we're going to be able to deploy the resources to create this other result, and we've got a solid plan in place, then that's not a problem. Like, that's not a problem. That's a choice. And really owning that, and not like, you know, just having the respect and having your own back and not worrying about what other people are going to think or say about like any decision that you make, whether it's to take on debt or to pay down debt, to bring on people or to like release people. It's all on the menu and available, and the ability to change your mind is always the other option. I find so often that you start down a pathway, my clients start walking down a pathway and they feel like they don't have, like, it's like they got to keep charting the course. And that's where I feel like my work really comes in, where it's like, no, this is your choice right now, but we can go left, we can go right, we can turn back around. And no, none of those are bad. They're just options that are on the table that we can then like we can pivot and point ourselves in another direction. If we do so from a place of like great intention. And I think that that's the part that is always, like the lack of awareness around the availability of that intention, is that they just are like, I have to do this because, as you said before, this is what everybody else is doing. And it's like, no, like, what do you want? Especially business owners. It's like, you got into this because you had some desire in your brain to create something for yourself and for your family. And like, just like, an understanding that those desires and those dreams change. And that's totally fine. But just to be able to have your own back in that process is just, if anything, like, that's the number one thing.
Right. Is the great segue to one of my questions that I was going to ask, and which is, why is it important, like, to create a money management system when you start out? Because we're just starting to talk about businesses that are actually, you know, business owners that are sort of at the beginning stages, and it's hard when you're not earning, or you're, we touched on the idea of looking at money and then feeling like you're failing, or there's, you're marrying up the concept of your self-worth to the actual dollars in your bank. But when you're starting a business, you speak about having a money management system and how important that is. Do you want to just explain what that means for someone who's actually at that startup stage? Because I feel like that sings my language because of what I do. Mm-hmm. But I believe that regardless of where you're at, it's so important to ensure that you've got the right process in place.
Absolutely. So, so for me, it's, I obviously work with businesses, like people that have businesses, right? But I think so much of it is like, you're bringing in the personal side of it. And it's because I think that for the types of clients that I work with, they are people who, like, very much their personal livelihoods really are created from what they're doing in their business. And so, like, the first thing in terms of the money management system, even before we get into the business, we really have to clearly define what is enough and what is, like, on a personal standpoint, like, what is that money management system? Do you have goal creations around personal finance, whether it's, you want to, like, buy a house, a car, if you want to pay for your college, your kids' college education, if you want to save for retirement, whatever those things are, you want to pay down debt, whatever those are, like, throw them all on And then have like a really like, and then do you understand how your money is like, how it comes in and then what it's doing and what, like, how are you deploying it to work for you? Not just like in terms of expenses, but also like, it, you know, like, are you in relationship where like, if you're investing money, like, are you checking those investments and making sure that they are aligned with like the results that you're looking to create? Are you working with people that are able to do that for you? So like, it's about that money management system personally. So building that out and having that. And I know that that might sound like, oh, I don't have all of that sophistication. I don't need to worry about that. Even if you just use some sort of a software in order to help you track your expenses and you know, recognize the income and track your expenses from a personal point, like that's going to be super helpful. Then when you swing over to the business, I think what starts to happen is then you start building the financial system and the money management system, which is like the really exciting stuff that I find exciting that other people don't, which is like the bookkeeping system. So picking a software and like being really intentional about it. And I always tell business owners that are just starting out, they're going to want to like use a spreadsheet or they're going to want to use some sort of free software. And I invite them to step in just for like 30 seconds, the future version of themselves as a 6-figure, 7-figure CEO who's going to be really happy that you made the corrective steps and to create the financial bookkeeping system, like as a new business owner from the get-go and not worrying about like, oh, I'm just going to cut cost in this area. I don't think, in my opinion, this is not the area where you're going to want to cut cost. So like having that bookkeeping system and then learning how to use the bookkeeping system, because again, as I said, if you're somebody who doesn't want to like, who wants to avoid the money, I think this is the invitation for you to then like really work on like sharpening that skill of like having the relationship with money, learning how to do the bookkeeping and everything. Because when you're just starting out, yes, you're doing lots of different things, but essentially if you're learning how to manage the money and how it all works, when you are in a position to outsource it, you are not doing it from a place of abdicating of like, I need to get this done. Like I need to get this off my plate because I hate doing this. And it's like, it's more of, I choose to, because I know that there's other revenue generating things that I can do with my time than this. So there's like that piece of it. And then just adding in things like, you know, like not commingling your business and your personal finances. And, you know, again, just setting yourself up as a professional, like business and behaving as a business owner, even if you're just starting out, like, so separating those finances and then implementing like a cash flow management system, like profit first, and being able to say, okay, I am intentionally deciding ahead of time that my income is going to come in and I'm going to allocate it in these percentages. And I love all my reasons for that. But again, like as like you build this money system, what you're also doing is sort of reflecting back to your personal situation. And if you're somebody who's working full time and doing this as a side hustle or side gig and looking to then eventually replace your income, if you've got both systems working for you, you're going to know like, okay, I need to replace $5,000 a month in personal income that I get from my 9-to-5 job. All right, I have like a client that's paying me $1,000. Okay, so like I'm one step closer and really trying to like get like that like tracker and that mile marker. And it's like, when do I, you know, how many months do I have to have consistently creating this result before I decide to maybe start having conversations with my employer about pulling down to part-time, or maybe resigning because I have created the evidence and the belief that like I'm all in on this business and that I have my back financially in order to like create the results that I want. And so like that money management system, although very action oriented, is like everything to kind of driving everything forward in terms of like the financial plan that you're going to do the mindset work to get to.
Absolutely. You've just, everything you just said is amazing, because when you hit some really key points there, I'm going to go back for a moment. When you say, even when you're starting out, to look at the software, learn the software, because you've got to step into your future self. Mm-hmm. And by stepping into your future self, that's who you're going to quantum leap to as you grow in your business, right? So by stepping into your future self as a CEO of a 6-7-figure business, you're now then able to read the reports completely all over it, but even at the very, very start, this is teaching you money mindfulness is what I talk about. It's like looking at the numbers, being mindful of the numbers, being aware of the numbers, and being aware of how you feel. So sometimes if that brings up a whole can of worms of fear and anxiety and, potential angst or just absolute wanting to run and hide, then that's stuff that we can then know to work on, right? Early in the piece, before you actually get to the point where it's a hot mess and you're handing it over to somebody and you still don't really want to deal with it. You're never going to step in the CEO role there.
No.
Because you're not that place of your future self. Same kind of thing. I love the idea of just setting up the management system, being really clear, and it will help you define what does that profit look like? What are these goals that I've got? How's that going? How many clients will I need? All of those kind of things to then actually work on the money mindset. Sometimes it says at the apple before the cart and vice versa, but this sounds like a really logical, practical way for someone who's starting a business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that when you're able to do that, and then just, again, like have like those weekly check-ins with yourself, when you do decide to outsource this part of the business, you get to show up to those meetings and you like already know the foundation of what this business is. And so that you're able to almost like participate and be part of the conversation, not just as like, oh, I hope the numbers look good, but more of like, no, I know what these numbers are going to say. And I'm like all in for the conversation and like leveraging the person who's helping you create the financial results, the CFO, like being able to kind of like go like you said, quantum leap into other more sophisticated conversations around how to scale and grow. Because here's the thing, like you can try to scale and grow yourself out of like these sorts of like situations in terms of like scarcity mindset and all that. But what I will tell you is if you are able to create those financial results where you can get to the 6, multiple 6, the 7, the multiple 7, the 8-figure businesses, those scarcity mindsets will not go away. They will magnify. Like it will just become quite a larger issue. And so like, why not start to just really create that love and compassion for yourself? And knowing that like you can treat all of this in a really thoughtful way, like early on, and know that it will inevitably come up. I think a lot of people also think that once they create these financial results and they've like arrived, that like these problems will go away. And I guess what I'm saying is that they might not feel as heavy and as like deep rooted, but essentially they're going to eventually like they sometimes do pop up. But instead of being like, oh my God, and like it shutting you completely down, you're like, oh, hi, how are you? You're back. I see you. I got you. I love you. 18-year-old self who has to pay for college education. Like, I understand you're scared. You have no clue, but like, I'm 43. I've got this. Please come. I will take care of you, but know that we are not there. We are here. But like, that's okay. Like nothing's gone wrong when that happens.
No, I sort of now, because we've both been on our journeys with the money mindset stuff, is when you start working on this, there's a lot of deep work you do. There's forgiveness work. There's, looking at your patterns, your behaviors. There's looking at your influences and people that sort of have semi-programmed you along your journey as well, that you've kind of got to do a bit of weeding along the way. And just like a garden, it's going to have its moments where it organically grows those weeds again, and you got to dig them up again but this time you now have a process and it's easier and they're loose and it's just, oh, that just came out. Okay. Acknowledge. And they know that I'm actually growing every single time. It's just allowing that garden to flourish and grow further, because I feel like those little hiccups along the road, I used to beat myself up and go, what have I done wrong? How come I'm getting this sort of issues come back up? In my business, I'm being very, very honest. In my business, we have a license where we get paid through. So my fees go to the license first and then come to me. So I'll be doing work on certain clients. And then there's this bit of a lag, right, of being paid. And this kept coming, like, whereas, I've had consistent work, and then I would have this huge lag of cash flow. And I'd go, well, years into the game, why does this still happen? Mm-hmm. And I realized this is a pattern. It's actually got nothing to do with the fact that I'm consistently working or with the license. There was a scarcity thing going on with me that I had to do some work and really work out what was going on, because every time that happened, I went into a sort of autopilot of meltdown, freak out. Oh my gosh, I've got a team I've got to look after financially, I've got responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And I'd go into this meltdown and freak out that I might not be able to cover it all until the next income that comes in, which I think I'm not alone with other businesses, but it was my reaction mm-hmm. that kept coming back up and having to deal with that. This is a pattern of mine. It's got nothing to do with the consistency of my work. It's got nothing to do with, and I will get more flow if I just deal with how I react to it.
Right. And I think that it's so funny because processing emotions, especially negative emotions, like nobody wants to do that. And especially if you're somebody who is just like, oh my God, what? You want me just to sit there and feel what's going on in my body? I remember even just so much as a few years ago, I was like, I am 100% not doing that. And then I did, and I was a competitive swimmer. And so when I actually, the first time, I really did the processing of emotions work, what it felt like, it was I was processing anxiety. And I, as I processed it, what it felt like was, it felt like my body was just it was coming up and then it was going out through my limbs. And it felt like lactic acid buildup from competing in a race. And it was very that was sort of what I became familiar with. And then I attached to okay, processing emotions is not bad, because I know from all of my years of competitive swimming that it's, it happens, but that my body's processing it. It's going through, I just accelerated my heart and did all these things and everything. And it needs to come back down, but that it's processed and that nothing's gone wrong. And really understanding that part of it was so important. It was scary. It was uncomfortable, but I'm so happy that I did it, because it made me realize that processing emotions is so critical, especially ones that are deeply rooted in thoughts that we know that we really need to work on and heal in order to move forward.
100%. And if you're sort of listening to this going, what's that got to do with money management systems and building my business and getting it to the next level? Or when am I ready to go from my side hustle to a business? The point is that when you're looking at the numbers and you feel those emotions, or you actually know that you avoid, or that you've got this love-hate relationship, you want the money, but then you don't want to deal with it. Whatever the case may be, the fact is, there's emotions driving those behaviors. And until you actually face them, that's facing the music, you're facing your relationship with money, you're healing that relationship with money, and healing that relationship with money will then take you to the next level. Mm-hmm. In my case, really, the time frame between my income coming in every fortnight has been the same. It wasn't like a month. It was the same. But for me, I just would have these moments of panic that money's just not it's just going to stop or something. It was very illogical. Mm-hmm. But I would go into this sort of scarcity mindset and have a massive freak out, because my overheads as the business was growing. Mm-hmm. Because I was trying to scale. I still am. I'm still in that journey. It's not like it's changed. But, I'm actually about to bring on another team member, but I had to do exactly what you were saying, Aimee, before, is look at how many, when you're starting a business, it's how much do I need to be bringing on to be able to cover that, that expense. So I already in my mind calculated, well, what's that person? That's another $5,000 a month for their income. So that's what we've got to now work on for them to come in. So what are we going to strategically do to get that happening? And why I needed that was because I needed to get to that next level. I wanted to get to that next level of profitability, which you speak a lot about too, how important it is to really focus on the profit.
Yeah, I think so often we're, like I view revenue as like a vanity metric. So whatever your goal is, like 6, 7, 8 figure, 9, whatever you want to do you, like, own it. It's amazing. I love it for you. If you love it for you. And I also think that like everyone is so caught up in it, but what they don't talk about is what I want to have the conversation about is like, okay, flip that coin. How much are you spending to create that result? And so at the end of the day, are you a profitable business? Because I love, and I think that there's this notion of, okay, I need to have like a 7-figure business. So I need to create $1 million. But if you are someone who has $1 million business and you've spent $1.1 million in expenses, you have a loss of $100,000, right? Versus the business who maybe is like a $100,000 business who has spent $25,000 in expenses, who has $75,000 in profit. Like that is a very healthy business by like profitability standards. And that's the part that it's like, that's how you can continue to feed your business the oxygen that it needs in order to create the scale. Please don't take this as like, oh my gosh, I have a loss, then she's saying that this is bad. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if you think that the achieving of the revenue goal is sort of that hallmark, I just invite you to consider the other side of it, and that to also consider what are you giving up in terms of profitability in pursuit of the revenue? Because the profitability comes back to the owners, right? The profitability builds into the equity of the business. It creates the sustainability piece of it. So if you're always dealing with cash flow issues, you're never going to be able to scale it to a point of it being sustainable in a healthy business, because you're constantly like growing the business from the revenue side in order to like keep feeding like the beast of expenses, because you haven't like designed and developed intention behind like, okay, can I create these financial results without spending all of this money? And how do you?
Oh my God, Amy, I feel like I need you now. Well, it's because I've been down this road, right? I've had that. I fed the beast, and then I've gone, but I know a lot. I'm very fortunate in terms of the money mindset stuff, and that's what's saving me and the business, because if I didn't do that work, I would be snowed under by the cost and expenses of this running this business and feeling completely a slave to it. Which I know, and I was down that road, and I'm working on shifting that. And one of the shifts for me has been the same, similar to what you're talking about, is looking at the profitability, but changing my affirmations around what I want, my goals, and actually going, I am a profitable business. And when I'm setting those financial goals now, it's not setting a revenue goal, it's setting a profit goal, which is very different. And it feels very different it's a massive shift, and it's actually meant the way I operate and going forward, how I'm operating, which is why I'm bringing a new staff member, because I'm now freeing up more time so that I actually am profitable.
Absolutely. And I think that when you're like working and like you're looking at the numbers and trying like and figuring out those processes, number one, like that's where someone like me like helps sort of navigate through all of that. But the other thing too is that it's really coming up with a list of solutions, right? Or like a list of experiments of like, hey, I can look. I think that like one of these theories is that if I want to create this, then I can bring somebody in that's going to create this result, which then is going to lead us to this. And there's like having someone else who can kind of see the cause and effect of like whatever like thoughts are in terms of like strategies and plans, like that's how, like, you know, I think that's where I do a really like great job for my clients in terms of helping them navigate that. Because for me, there's this whole like idea of like business is not personal and blah, blah, blah. And I just think that like, I just don't agree with that. Like, I think it is very personal, because if you're a business owner who has a relationship with your employees and everything, like it becomes one of these things where it's like, if you know that someone's not performing, or if you think that somebody who is currently in a certain position in your business is not the right fit in order for you to scale and grow, but you are so attached to them because they were your first employee and they helped you get there. It's like you're letting the loyalty of like that cloud like the decisions about the business. And so like, if you can see that from like a very like unattached standpoint, it can help your clients realize that in terms of like, they get to have the agency to make the decisions and say, yeah, I got it. I understand that like this person has outgrown this position and I need somebody else that has more of the skill set in order to get me to this next level. Like I get that, and I'm just not ready to do that. That's not a problem to make that decision of like, I'm not ready to move forward with that. But the fact that you're going to have someone who's going to be able to bring that into your awareness so that you know, like you're no longer not aware of it when someone who has like no like relational context into like all the players, like like for me, like I just look at like different numbers, like the numbers are neutral and I can say, okay, what's going on here, here, and here, tell me the story about this. And then when they start, then it's like, okay, this is where the work is, like, here we go, there's resistance around this, let's have that conversation.
Yeah, brilliant. Business and emotions are hand in hand, just as money and emotions. It's like we give birth to a concept, something. It's so important that we be aware of that. And it's great to have a coach or have, like the virtual CFO, like yourself, or have the advisor step in from a very neutral perspective, because there's no emotion there. And you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. That's something that is so important to always remember, have in the back of your mind, right? Someone else is going to see it before you see it if you're stuck in the thick of it. That old saying is like, you can't see the forest among the trees and vice mm-hmm. versa. When you're in the thick of it, it's going to be hard for you to see or even navigate. But if someone's standing outside, they can give you the torch and show you the way. Mm-hmm. And that's what, I guess that's one of the roles you play, Aimee, mm-hmm. in that respect, from the mindset coaching through to looking after the bookkeeping and then getting them from where they started to where they really want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also I think the one thing too that I always tell my clients, that it's like, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. Like mm-hmm. we aren't going to create this transformation overnight. And if you're looking for a quick fix, then like, I can tell you that I'm not the person for you, because you're going to have early wins. I can tell you that. But if you're looking to, like with Profit First, if you're somebody who is way over, like 10% or higher on your expenses, then what we need to really do is like, we can't take you from like 80% expense to 50% in like 90 days. Like we would kill your business in the process. We can't do that. So we have to do it in a gradual way. And like just someone who like, if you are looking for someone who is like me, then I would recommend like how do they approach it? And it's not to say that something's going to take like forever, but you really have to be all in on it being a long-term committed like partnership, because there are so many things that you're going to need to triage, if you will, before you really start the journey. It's like the training that has to happen before you like leave. And I feel so grateful, being a like former competitive athlete, to be able to like really pull upon those like sports analogies. And like, particularly with swimming, I was a distance swimmer. So like for me, like pace work and endurance was so important. Like I was not a fast sprinter, but I was someone who like did long distance races and had had the strategy. And I feel like I apply that into working with my businesses, because again, like it's really like you can do quick sprint moves. It's not to say that that's not on the table. It will get put on the table, but then it gets taken off because there's like a time and place for when you use it. We can't be sprinting, because I think that that's where like this hustle culture that I think seems to be like so prevalent in our society, in our global society right now. It's like, okay, if we just work really hard, we'll get there. And it's like, well, no, like we're not like robots. Like we are like human beings who have like these nervous systems that need processing. We like our bodies that need to have rest. And so, like drinking Kool-Aid from people of like, oh, you can just work like, like 20 hours a day. Like, no.
It's not sustainable.
No.
It's unhealthy. And we've got to remember, I always bring this back to, regardless of whether they're starting a business, they're working part-time and they've got a part-time business, or they're just even considering it, it's what is the why? What is your motivation? What got you to want to be in business? I had to do that. I do that sort of now more of a regular, like an annual sort of review, but my why's shifted as I've grown. And as I've grown, my need to slow down has actually become far more important, and to be more present for my family and for my mental health and all of the other, and lifestyle. And when I think about it, and I was on a podcast with a guest not that long ago, I had an aha moment because I realized I was burning the candle at both ends. I was working my butt off. And I remembered my why when I started my business was to work part-time around the kids when they were little. And here I am taking now because I've got a 2-year-old, there's an 11-year gap between my youngest two, taking my 2-year-old to daycare 9 to 5 so I can do the 9 to 5 thing. Hang on. Well, who set that rule? Like, I'm not in corporate. I'm running my own show here. Do I have to do 9 to 5? So I'm changing. This year is the year of shifting back to my why, my original why, but adding some more whys in there to actually build and establish this business that works for me. And that's what is really, I think, my message to anyone who's thinking about going into business or in business, is to bring that to the table as well, because then the money mindset work and the profitability work and the, your money management system will all actually work in sync. And it'd be an easier process for you.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that I was, I felt like coming out was like, question everything and really ask why. And then the other part is like, what is this all for? And I think that so often it becomes like, for me, I get so excited about wanting to help and transform businesses that, is this the appropriate client load for me? Do I have the team in place in order to take on more clients, or do I want to do something else? Do I want to send my message and deliver it in a different way? And that's the season that I'm in right now, where it's, I've tried to like do this next thing like for a while, and it just hasn't been the right time. And now I feel like, okay, this is becoming more and more the right time to do this. And this is what feels really strategically aligned, because like my why, like at the very most fundamental level when I started this business, was I wanted to get my kids off the bus. And it was like, that was like the huge like why for me. But even more so now, like it has evolved, like I get to get my kids off the bus, and I want to like make it known that it is possible to have a relationship with money, no matter where your money story originates from. If you are someone who has generational wealth, you can have a relationship with money. If you are somebody who had come from like the inner depths of poverty, you get to have a relationship with money. Like the relationship with money that you wish to have for yourself is available. I can show you how.
Brilliant. Yes, you can. So, that's fantastic, Aimee. So we have a very similar why in that respect with our kids. And I think a lot of female entrepreneurs are in that boat because, the corporate world doesn't actually always allow us that flexibility, but we can then get caught in the trap, as we talked about, into that hustle, and work. So it's really important to us, those questions, you know, at the end of the day. Those are the most important questions, is what is the why? What is actually motivating you to start a business? And I'd say being in business is probably the most rewarding thing I feel in terms of self-growth. It's also possibly the most challenging, but I don't want that to scare people. If you've got the right sort of mindset, systems in place and whatnot, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that like the person that I have become as a result of having my own business, I think she's having a lot more fun than she would have if she stayed like the corporate path, you know? And I think that she has like who I've become on this journey is just such a more evolved person and more like open person. And I like the people that I've met in my journey, I would never have met if I was working a 9 to 5. Like I have friends all over the world, which is just incredible, you know? And I just love what this business has afforded me in terms of like, not just meeting and working with the most amazing business owners, but also like creating the relationship and friendship with people across the world. It's just, I mean, I can't imagine it being any greater than that.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a great encouragement for anyone who wants to start. Now, we could keep going. Honestly,
Sure.
This conversation would just go for another hour if we could allow it. But I just thought we would wrap it up now. I'll be putting in the show notes how you can reach out to Aimee. Hopefully, I'll get my act together and get some reels out there as well, because there's some amazing nuggets that came out of today's show. Aimee, thank you so much for your time today. It has been an absolute pleasure. I mean, as I said, I could talk about this till the cows come home, because this is possibly my favorite topic, is money mindset and sort of getting your money management systems in place. Absolutely.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Absolutely. It's a total pleasure. If you like what you're hearing, share. Send it in an email, send the love, tell us in ratings as well, give us comments, and let me know what else you'd like to hear about as well. Thank you so much again, Aimee. Have a great day, everyone, wherever you are.
Bye.
Bye. That was fantastic.